Welcome to our session entitled Inclusion, Agency and Community and Higher Education, Making the Most of Student Life. I am Laura Melendez, co-director of the CUNY Peer Leaders Program and admin specialist of the Futures Initiative at the CUNY Graduate Center. Our session today will focus on student agency and leadership from the students who are in the CUNY Peer Leaders Program. We are currently in a pilot year of blending both the Futures Initiative Undergraduate Leadership Program and the CUNY Humanities Alliance Scholars Program, which supports its students with social emotional wellness, actively uses student-centered pedagogical practices, and gives students agency throughout the course of the program. Our blended new iteration, the CUNY Peer Leaders Program, supports and teaches CUNY undergraduate students from across the 2- and 4-year campuses leadership and mentorship skills that they in turn use to create pathways for humanities-based scholarship with the core component on social justice. We as co-directors of this program are well aware that the vast majority of the CUNY population are from marginalized and underrepresented communities across the 5 boroughs throughout New York City and make it a priority to lead with culturally responsive pedagogy and have created a program that grants our students a variety of community building meetings, workshops, and enrichment opportunities designed to explore concepts of voice, respect, critical and creative thinking, and presentation of self, which are essential in leadership, but also speak to having a culture of care, which we pride the program in being able to provide to these students. Without further ado, I will now turn the floor over to my colleagues I co-direct this program with for them to introduce themselves, and also the CUNY peer leaders who will be presenting on today's panel. Kaysi and Kashema, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Hi everybody, I'm Kaysi Holman. I'm the director of of programs and administration for the CUNY Humanities Alliance and also co-director on the CUNY Peer Leaders.
Hi everyone, my name is Kashema Hutchinson. I am a co-director of the CUNY Peer Leaders Program as well as a PhD candidate in the Urban Education Program and a FI fellow.
Hello all, my name is Sam. My pronouns are he, him, his, they, them, theirs. I'm a junior at John Jay College and I'd like to pass the mic to my fellow peers.
Hi everyone, my name is Sheila. My pronouns are she, her. I am a student at the City University of New York at Baruch College, and I'm very excited to be here.
Hello everyone, my name is Matos. I attend Lehman College. I am also a peer leaders fellow, and I'm excited to be here to share the stage with my fellow peers.
Hi everyone, my name is Ramesh Beharry. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a senior at Queens College and also a peer leader. And I'm excited to be here with everyone.
Hi, I'm Gus Jimenez, FA Fellow, PhD candidate in Latin American Literature. I'm very happy to be here with you all. Continue.
Awesome. Sheila, do you want to introduce the Jamboard?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so to begin our panel today, we're going to have what's called a Jamboard. If members of the audience aren't familiar with what that is, essentially a Jamboard is an interactive whiteboard where the audience can write their thoughts, ideas, questions, and comments. It's going to help us open up the floor and create dialogue between the panel and the participants and allow us to have a discussion that we can actually take away from. Right now, we have 2 prompts up. The first one says, how can you make the most of student life? So this can include how you define student life, what you've done to award yourself the most fulfilling student life experience, and any other idea that comes to mind when it comes to this topic. And the next prompt is, what can you do to better your experience and the experience of others in higher education? So this one aims to get the audience thinking about reimagining the way higher education operates and how we can work towards more inclusion, more agency, and more community. Participants are encouraged to write in their thoughts throughout the panel today, and we'll be revisiting them during our open forum towards the latter half of the session. And also, if you are not tech savvy like myself, and you're unfamiliar on how to place things onto the Jamboard, you're also welcome to type your thoughts out in the chat, and our very wonderful facilitators will put them onto the board for everyone to see. We're very excited to hear your thoughts and have these discussions that are so vital in shaping the role of education for our society. So without further ado, here are our panelists to discuss what making the most of student life means to us.
Moses, do you want to give an overview of the topic today?
Yes, of course. Lauren gave such a great intro, so I'm going to take some energy off of that. And as you see in the session, we're talking about inclusion, agency, community in higher education. And as a whole, this two-day conference has been an opportunity to imagine and redesign graduate education to support not only students, scholarship, but also the overall public good. And in terms of making the most of student life in the context of a global pandemic, we want to imagine how we can have better inclusion in higher education and also help build on a community.
Great. So moving into the discussion segment, so the facilitators are going to begin by asking our student panel to respond to a question. And then once the panel has responded, the facilitators will open the discussion on the topic to other comments and questions before moving on to the next question. If you have additional questions or comments that we don't get to during a discussion on a topic, please feel free to post those in the chat or the Jamboard. And of course, you can always work in the Jamboard on it or in chat responding to one of the two questions. So first, I'd like to ask the panelists, what does making the most of student life mean to you right now? Sam?
Yeah, so I'll open up. So I think making the most of student life to me right now, especially during the pandemic, means building a community, especially with like-minded individuals. And oftentimes with fellowships, clubs, and outside activities, we connect with essential topics, and that allows us a form of escape, especially with the obstacles that we face in college. And I know I personally just want to get away from everything and, just like not really even like visually see these things because it can be so overwhelming in itself. And I think, student leadership, student activism, and just kind of this outside community is a separate course in of itself. That's external education, because it isn't just its own experience, especially during a pandemic. I think it's a community building effect. I think there's a certain amount of skill that's needed to build a community, especially as student leaders. And I think it's a really great opportunity. And we're in a really good sweet spot during a pandemic, which is going to be the strangest thing I've ever said. But, you can say, oh, I had an amazing year in 2020 and 2021. It's like, yeah, you did that during a pandemic. Or, I had a really bad one. It's like, yeah, I think we all kind of did. And it's a kind of the perfect time to kind of test out these skills we never really felt we could, with such confidence. And I think that, a really big important part here is, self-care. It's a form of activism, it's resilience. And I think it's important that we recognize that there's a huge liability during this time for sympathy burnout. And, sympathy is a form of emotional labor, and we aren't getting paid for this emotional labor, especially in a pandemic. And I think a lot of professors need to start setting boundaries for themselves about, when am I going to be a caretaker and when am I going to be a caregiver, and when we care for others, we sustain an empathetic presence towards others and their problems and their distress. We're active and it's an attentive presence and process. And when we take care of others, we make decisions and solve problems for each other that, may in fact be, competent to make decisions for themselves. We're not letting others, resent, and we're taking away this idea of self-sufficiency and opportunities to develop, different types of capacities. So I think it's really an important aspect, especially with leadership and outside community building, that we make sure that all students and faculty feel safe and comfortable, especially with mental health and wellness. There's a certain point where you have to tell students and other individuals, unfortunately, I can't provide for you anymore. And I think there needs to be a healthy balance in these kinds of cases. I don't think there really is a lot right now because there's not really a training. There's no transparency for these educational methods, especially at the admin level. And I think admins really need to kind of look at themselves and ask themselves, am I validating emotions and circumstances? Am I asking clarifying questions? Am I asking the community what they need and want right now in relation to the problems we're discussing? And am I providing enough options through referrals and mutually agreed upon options? And actions. And I think our communities are just acting as counter spaces right now, especially with, student leadership. And I think we need to explore that more. And with that, I kind of like to pass it off to my fellow peers.
Moses, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, making the most of student life for me has been mainly just talking when I can. So we're all in a Zoom heavy life as we are right now, but I saw myself as a really reserved person. So at the thought of being at home and not being in the school setting, I thought it was going to be fine, but I didn't realize how much I missed just the interaction of people and just school. And so I don't know if my fellow peers can relate, but as we're going on semester to semester, it's getting more awkward when the teacher is like, hey, how's everyone doing? And no one speaks. Or when, you know, the class feels like it's dragging on because no one has the fuel anymore, because it's just like, I'm tired of every day being the same day in front of the same screen. So for me, getting out of my shell a little bit, and even though it is uncomfortable, just making myself talk more, because I do understand that it is hard, not only just teaching in front of 500 kids with no camera on, and it just feels like you're talking to yourself. And a lot of these professors talk a lot. I mean, they get paid for it, but even in that sense, it's just like, I understand the human aspect of it. It's just like, I want to see it. And I think opportunities like this is great to grow student life. The past week, I've gotten emails in my campus that people are still holding like camp fairs, or not camp, club fairs. And it's just like, as much as it they expect no one to respond, it's good that they're at least trying. And like, I forward the emails, because even though it's not a club I'm interested in, it's still an attempt to make sure, even though we're in these troubling times, that we can still build on community.
Thank you. Ramesh?
Oops. Hey. Yeah, I really think when I think about student life, I kind of really broaden it out, and just as life. I mean, school is a microcosm of life. And I guess, in the COVID context, I have to see it as a space of healing. And so, I mean, schools are food pantries, they're counseling. It's where I get my counseling. So I'm very much attuned, like I want the buy-in. Student life is like, yeah, it encompasses so many spots of healing and community, which is another aspect of healing. And so I guess that's what I'm really taking away from it. And I guess I'm sensitive too to this. I don't know who did this comment on not getting paid for the emotional labor. But I know that, I guess if I would say, I know that, because of what we're going on right now, we're tasked, both everyone involved in school, whatever your role is, there's an increased demand of all of your, abilities and all of our abilities to, have many hats. And I guess, the things that stick out for me is the people that are able to kind of, I don't want to say transcend, but that are able to kind of go past all of this, and to be able to reach out, because the Futures Initiative did a thing with it was education a while back. I don't remember the month, but a couple of things kind of stuck out with me in that. And one of them is that CUNY takes the top 100%. So Dr. Khanum was one of the people that spoke there, and I think it was Kathy who said that, of the LaGuardia Community College. Someone at LaGuardia. They take the top 100%. This idea of an unencumbered student, that is not. Sometimes I feel like that expectation is still on us, and the truth is, it's very much not so. And I think everything that's happening right now is highlighting that more than ever. And while I don't expect people or expect staff or even each other to kind of bear the brunt, like of unpaid work, to kind of or pathologize like every aspect of what's going on. I some of the most powerful experience I've had most recently is teachers and my peers that are kind of able to kind of go all that and still reach out, and to find a way to collaborate together to kind of solve some of these really weighty things that I wish I had the answers to, but I don't right now. So, I guess those are the things that really move me.
Thank you. Sheila, what does student life mean to you right now?
Yeah, I think Sam, Moses, and Ramesh put it so beautifully, how student life essentially is being able to encompass like a community, For me personally, student life is giving yourself and others like a platform to find your voice and kind of be able to like speak yourself and like speak yourself with conviction as well. And you know, as my peers have said, like in the context of COVID, since we don't have a physical university, it becomes so difficult for us to find ways to make the most of our student life and to find these like safe spaces that we had before, where it was so easy to just walk up to like a club room at school and be like, hey, I want to join, because you know, you build that community with like-minded people and you have these ideas that you kind of like bounce off of each other, and that creates a sense of community, creates a sense of home. So I think that's what like making the most of student life means to me. And also whenever I think of student life, I think of like accessibility and reimagining, which I think those two concepts are very deeply interwoven into each other, just because like once you acknowledge that accessibility is something that we all kind of struggle with, whether it's like being, you know, quote unquote, like mentally there, or even like physically not having access to, let's say, like Wi-Fi or like a stable connection or something that you can like go into student life with. Like once we acknowledge that, then we can step into that idea of reimagining. So like reimagining things how we can make things easier for people that, I don't know, don't have stable Wi-Fi, or reimagining how things would be if we reached out to people who, you know, felt like they don't have the mental capacity to join a Zoom class and, you know, speak or turn their camera on. So I think that student life is very essential, like reaching out is very essential when it comes to student life. And yeah, I think that's what it means to me.
Great. Does anybody else, we have other CUNY peer leaders here and other folks in the room who are having their own experience. What does making the most of student life mean to you? Does anyone want to contribute to the conversation before we move on to the next question? Okay, I'll pass it to Kashema then. Oh,
Muted, sorry. So the next question is, how are you feeling about the faculty's social and mental awareness of their students in the pandemic right now? And I'm going to start with Ramesh.
Yeah, so I guess I touched on some of that already. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been in school long enough where it runs the gamut of experiences with professors that are really sensitive, are able to reach out, that understand that, you know, again, we're not unencumbered students. We have a wide variety of needs, and they're able to, you know, refer us to the right direction. Hey, we have counseling. You know, this is what the school has to offer. This is what the school's working on. So for instance, I'm at Queens College, and Queens is trying to get a kind of like, I don't know, like a social work hub, you know, so that can provide many different services. So, you know, and some professors know that really well. And I'm appreciative of that. And I've had to use some of that at different times of my undergrad. You know, some teachers are not. And you know, and that's something I think that, you know, I think that, you know, improvement, there could be much improvement with that. And my partner is a 8th grade teacher right now. And, you know, some of the things that she had to go through when I'm thinking about this is like, they all have to do these like mental health, you know, kind of training. And it's like, I would love to, like, you know, I don't know, maybe some teachers might irk at the fact of doing more training with that stuff. But, and I know a lot of teachers with her were kind of thinking like, oh, you know, we don't want to become, you know, mental health professionals. But I guess I would say that the goal is to not that you have to pathologize, you know, students, but just simply to increase your awareness about, you know, the wide variety of you know, urgent needs that we have. Housing, which has affected me for many, you know, housing, disability, and counseling, which I've had to use, my whole time. And if I didn't have those, I don't think I would have, made it. I'm almost graduating, but I definitely needed all those key pieces. Yeah, that's kind of the most thing. And there's been plenty of that already that professors are doing. So I do want to also emphasize that, plenty of professors have, done that, and I'm, forever grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Ramesh, for adding your insight. I'm going to ask Sam to answer the question.
Thank you. I feel like faculty are being pulled into this feeling, the same feeling I think we're all kind of experiencing right now, which is kind of, we're all stuck in this extended form of adolescence with no end in sight, where working class youth are just growing up in a world without jobs, without community, and without trust. And I feel like a lot of work isn't being recognized in these spaces. And I think, faculty need to be recognized to a certain extent that, it's amazing to teach someone to learn to read and write. And that's the thing that younger generations, and older generations kind of disconnect on. And I think the thing that, younger generations want is to know that they are in fact adults. They want to be recognized as adults. And I think older generations kind of have this want to be recognized as, like, we've made it this far. They simply want to be recognized that they've made it this far and can offer something. And this big disconnect that's especially happening with this dehumanization of Zoom, we need to come up with kind of a counterattack for these kinds of things. I think everyone wants an education because it grants them the luxury to define their adulthood on their own terms. And that's a common human want. And I think faculty need to recognize that all types of students can recognize this in themselves and can recognize this with faculty. But I feel like these concepts, unfortunately, are sadly becoming universal, that, we're all kind of losing our ability to choose how we want to define our set paths. And this is really, kind of back to that point of emotional labor. Like, we need to start providing resources that allow us to kind of redirect these paths in more positive directions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Are there any other comments from the audience on this topic before we move on to the next question? Any other thoughts from alumni?
Malachi, did you have a comment, or you just wanted to leave it in the chat?
Oh, I didn't know that we could speak.
Yes.
That was a comment that I was leaving in regards to the last point. We were talking just about what, those social spaces really mean to us, and at least in my journey along my education, it's really served as an opportunity for me to turn to people outside of staff, outside of advisement, and kind of get that kind of peer-to-peer advice that you don't really get unless you have those experiences, which is why they're really valuable.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to pass it to Lauren.
Awesome. Thank you, Kashema. Okay, so our next question I'm going to pose to our leaders is, what strategies have worked for you to both give support and gain support for burnout and or mental health support in the past 6 months? We're going to start off with Sheila this time.
Thank you, Lauren. So when I think about burnout and mental health awareness, especially within the past 6 months, even year now, can you believe it's been a year? I think the one that's at the top of my list is reaching out, because, prior to this, I can't speak for everyone else, but for myself personally, it was if it was a minor inconvenience, I really wouldn't reach out. And this stemmed through across all of my relationships, whether it was with my professors, with my family, with my friends. It was if it was a minor inconvenience, just leave it at that, it's fine. But I think the past year has kind of allowed me to be more vocal about the things that I want and the things that I need, depending on the mental headspace that I'm in. So I think reaching out is definitely one of the things that is necessary to kind of keep yourself from burning out, because, reaching out to professors and being hey, I can't I cannot do this, like, you know, or reaching out to my friends and being like, I'm sorry, I haven't responded in like 2 weeks. I just don't have the mental capacity to do so. It's like reaching out and then setting those boundaries not only benefits yourself, but it also benefits the other person, because then they know that, you know, the situation that you're in and how to kind of maneuver around that. And also, I think empathy is a really big thing right now to kind of mitigate this burnout, just because, you know, I do these things called empathy exercises where you kind of put yourself in the other person's shoes, and like you have to kind of de-escalate any type of really intense emotion that you're feeling at the time. So like, you know, someone snaps at you and your professor's just like, yeah, I cannot be giving you any more extensions. And then, you know, the first reaction for me would be like, oh my goodness, like, are you serious? But then, you know, this goes back to the whole boundaries issue where, you know, the professor has to set boundaries for themselves, and then you have to set boundaries for yourself as well. And I think that Sam put it very beautifully when he said the dehumanization of Zoom. So when we are like looking at each other through a computer screen, it's really hard to get that human aspect of the other person. But, you know, you just have to kind of take a step back and realize, like, you know, everyone's kind of going, not even going through, I want to use the word coping rather, because like when it comes down to it, we're all coping with so much loss, so much grief because of what the pandemic has left behind. So I think that, you know, assuring that you're not burning out and taking care of your mental health and wellness, I think it starts with setting boundaries and also reaching out. Like those are my top two.
Awesome. Thank you, Sheila. Moses, I'm going to pose the same question to you.
So for me, it's been really hard dealing with burnout, because I think during this pandemic, it's been the first time that I had to like sit back and really say like, I can't continue the way I have, because for most of all my life and like in school, I've just been a worker bee. So I've been asked a lot. I spearheaded a lot of programs. I did a lot for the school. I was like public liaison, and it was just like, all right, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. But then when everything paused and shut down, it was just like, whoa, how am I going to deal with this? And then just thinking about life. And I found myself shutting down a lot because I just didn't have the heart to just be like, I'm just going to keep doing it. And I think going to resources, like, I think when it was break, I emailed Kaysi on her ways to how to deal with burnout and how to plan ahead, and also just talking to friends. My best friend, he goes to Georgetown, and he's been having it really hard. And like, he told me that like I was a safe haven for him with, you know, with dealing with just traveling back and forth and just dealing with the intense workload. And it's just things like that, and just finding time to move back from things and take the break that I need, even though there's a lot of times where I don't want to. And even in the times where like I'm gonna give myself a break, I try to like push something in. I try to like read something, look at something, because like it's just like the way that we're in Zoom all the time makes me always feel like I'm behind on something, because I don't have there's no marker in my head to say like, no, you're fine, because, you know, I went somewhere, I did this. But I think definitely learning how to plan things out and just giving yourself, as much as you branch out time to study, you branch out time to go to class, you need to branch out time to just relax, to breathe, to just be. And that's been one thing that's been really helping me.
Awesome. Thank you, Moses. Does any of our leaders that are present have any thoughts on coping mechanisms with burnout? Feel free to unmute yourself and let us know your thoughts, comments, if you have them. This is not a space where you can't speak or add to the discussion. We encourage you and want you to add to the discussion. Since this is the leader session, we are letting you lead. So please feel free to join in at any time. Kaysi, do you want us to open up the floor?
We have a couple hands.
Oh,
we have a couple hands up. So Catalina, do you wanna start us off?
Go ahead. Awesome.
Hi guys, it's so nice to see you all after so long. I'm very happy to be here and I'm loving this so far because it's so important. And in my case with burning out and just having these coping mechanisms, I always get like in 1001 things at the same time because I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone. And it's sometimes a lot because we are just one person and we have to divide ourselves in work, in our interpersonal relationships, in our classes, and all the other stuff that we have to do. So something that I like to do is having a little to-do list, like I have one right now, and just prioritize and like saying, okay, I have this paper for next week, let me do that instead of watching Netflix, and trying to but always have some time for me. Like Sheila was saying, and Moses as well, it's always great to reach out, also take the time for yourself and be able to rest, to be you, because we are not robots. And I know that is, like Sam said, it's very dehumanizing to be in front of a computer all the time. We need human contact. We are social creatures, it's something that is in our nature, right? But at the same time, we are very fortunate because we are able to at least continue our education during a pandemic. So I know sometimes it's super difficult, but trying to, just look at the bright side and be grateful for the things that we have is a great start for you to be more productive and feel better with yourself, and and do the things that you got to do, right? And another thing that I like to do is when you reach out with your friends, try to leave work or things that stress you out of the equation. Just talk about life, have fun, just leave that out for a minute. If you need to talk about it and then you just feel frustrated and you need to let that out, okay, that's a different thing. But at least putting your mind in something different, take a little break while you're working and then come back. Those are things that are great and that really work for me. So I just wanted to share that. So I hope that all of you are doing okay. And again, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Marissa, do you want to join in?
Yeah, I would love to. I agree with the whole concept of reaching out and establishing boundaries. I don't know what it is about the pandemic that makes responding to a text message so difficult and dreadful. I love my friends so much, but it's just establishing those boundaries, not only with yourself, but kind of with people, and acknowledging that you can't do everything all the time for everyone is really important. But yeah, I think it's actually fascinating how through quarantine, COVID times, I feel like some people have gotten better at communicating, which is a little ironic, but into it for sure. Thank you.
Awesome. Sharifah?
Hi, yes, I just wanted to kind of comment also on reaching out, but specifically about reaching out to professors, because I think that sometimes we students get kind of stuck in our own heads. And I know that last semester I was really stressed out. And I literally just emailed my professor and I was like, hey, I have an assignment that's due. I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it. And she was like, okay, it's fine. So I think it's also kind of having that open line of communication with professors. And I think that even before the pandemic, I had always been a fan of office hours. So I like hanging out with professors and whatnot. But I think that now that we're online, it's even more important to still connect with professors and still talk about any difficulties you maybe have in the course or spelling, however, even with your personal life, to kind of understand what's going on when maybe assignments are late or maybe you're slacking off somehow.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Does anyone else want to contribute on this question or ask the panel or ask the room another question? Great. Any hands? Okay, well, I can ask another one if nobody has one. So we've talked a lot about community and reaching out and getting support and giving support. And so I'm wondering if their panelists can start by defining what community means for them and if and how that definition has changed in the last year. Anyone want to volunteer to go first?
I can
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
So that actually kind of really reminds me of this question that I've been recently asked as a trans individual is, kind of what does pride mean for me? And it took a lot of reflection for me recently. And, I kind of thought it was this very simple concept, it's what I am, it's who I am. But I started kind of understanding that it kind of falls into this idea of community. I think community comes down to a form of pride, which for me means supporting your community and honoring all the sacrifices that previous community leaders have made. It's not, a community is not something I want. It's something I'm a part of. I'm here. I'm present in this moment. And at its core, I think that that's community. It's the inherited knowledge that we are human, and more than human, we're something new and magical to be celebrated for how we navigate the world. Community is the ability to reflect on our fights, our tears, how much has changed, and still demand more. Community is support, communication, and the ability to be brave and say, my self-care, my life is not a riot. This dehumanization of my body, of my community, is a raid, and I'm not going to stand for this anymore. Community is a living, breathing creature all its own that sparks this internal feeling within all of us that allows us to have a consciousness of our own dignity. And I think belonging and identity are important for retention in community, which I think really directly correlates to the idea of these kind of primary characteristics of belonging, which is where do I have a role of responsibility? Where am I valued and cared for? Where are my racial identity and culture recognized? Where I share interests and values with others. And this kind of exploration leads us to understand that there's a ripple effect happening in a lot of communities, with the idea of, an individual sense of belonging. And there's a lot of context roles that are beginning to change, especially in a campus subculture. If we're talking about academics, regardless of whether an individual feels like they belong, whether as a university as a whole, even these little moments where we've built community, that gives us a sense of privilege, and the privilege of feeling like we belong with people like us. And there's this disparity going on with minority groups as a whole, and there's various factors that play that kind of create this big cultural dissonance, this kind of internalized fight with ourselves. And I think we really need to start pushing against that, especially in a Zoom culture. We can feel like, I don't know these people, I've never seen them in real life, why does it matter? And I think we need to start finding ways to kind of build these pseudo electronic physical connections. And I think that that's something new we were able to explore, and I think we should.
That was amazing. A wonderful definition. I don't know if anybody wants to also chime in or carry on the point.
I do. Previous to the pandemic, I had always looked at community through the only one I've been in. So I used to go to school. I used to go to middle school connected to a high school, and I always got the spiel of like, where community is a family. But I never felt that like I belonged in it. I just felt like I went there, and a community for me has been this program, as to where I can come and I can be myself, and I can show all of my skills, and I have a role and responsibility. And I don't think the responsibility in my mind is just, the requirements that are needed to participate in the program. I think it's a responsibility to be me and be genuine, in the sense where I go to the meetings and where I'm given opportunities to speak out and say everything that's on my mind, always in the meeting, always have a chance to be exposed to people in the CUNY system around the city. And I just feel like this is a great example of what a community is and what it should be, because it's everyone from different walks of life coming together and just being there for each other.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in? What does community mean to you, and how has it changed?
Yeah, I can go.
Carolina. Oh, Ramesh, you want to start? Yeah.
You can go. I'll go after.
Okay, Carolina.
All right, sure. So when I came to this country, like, having an idea of what is a community was just pretty rough, because, you feel you are an outsider. You feel like you don't belong anywhere, not even in your own house. It feels like you are outside of your comfort zone, and that you are, trying to find a way every day, but that you still don't feel comfortable 100%. However, when I started college, that experience changed, because the clubs that were available, the friends that you made in the classroom, like you had this environment that was so inviting. And I know that maybe, the experience is not the same for everybody. And I am very thankful that I was able to like have this experience so far in college. But, I just find that a community is understanding that no matter if you come from India or from the Dominican Republic or from, I don't know, Belize, like it doesn't matter from where you come from, you're in a place where diversity is celebrated and where you can find like people from everywhere and find things in common. And of course there are still issues, like there are still people that don't understand that you have to respect others' decisions with their lives, that respect other people's likes and stuff like that. And I'm hoping that slowly things like that get changed through education, because most of the time like people behave like that just because they don't understand, or they have not been educated about it, and they just reject it. You know what I mean? So far for me, like community is just this understanding, having empathy, having this interest in that the other person is well, even if you don't know them, understanding that even if that person, you never talk to them again, but at least that is a person like you who's trying every day to get to accomplish their dreams, to get to help their families, to reach a goal, and that we share all that together, and that we are humans, that we are humans after all. So just be mindful that even if we have different religions or different identities, that we are all the same, and that we have to love each other. I know that's super positive and super, unrealistic in many ways, but at least I'm trying to see things in this way, because so far it has worked. And if something works, to keep on going with it and try to better it every day, right? So I'm doing that.
Nice. Ramesh, you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many wonderful answers already. But I think the only thing I can add on top of everyone else's is just that, yeah, it seems for me, community kind of boiled down to the essence. I think it's almost simplified for me. It's really just who continues to be there and who welcomes, who welcomes you in. And so for me, it's the people that show up consistently. And, you know, even though, yes, I would love for them to be in person, but I'm very moved by the things happening, even, in imperfect virtual environment. There's still AA meetings going on. There's still a bunch of things, and however imperfect and however there is a big digital divide, and that, again, just one crisis, kind of illuminating the other cracks in our, overall society. But, you know, however, people choose to show up for each other, I know that in the end it counts. It's better than not. And so, those things really weigh on me for community, and the people that, and I guess also to add, it's like, I know for me, and, because of all, I'm very attuned to kind of mental health care and stuff. But I know for many people in my life, and sometimes myself included, the self-care tips and the boundary tips in the New York Times, they don't apply in my life. Sometimes things, you can't just write off as self-care, and it is important. I don't want to diminish it, because it's important to have that resiliency so you can keep going. However, I have to juxtapose it with a sense that it needs to happen, alongside overall collective, kind of healing. And so I guess, that's maybe a self versus collective thing, but it's hard, with all, especially again, COVID, some things there's only how many candles or or stretches that you can do to kind of, not to limit that. Self-care is more than that too, but what I'm saying is, I guess, people have showed up for me consistently, and they've done so in ways that, might even seem unhealthy. And I try to be sensitive to that too. But again, I can't be nothing but grateful for the people that have been able to do that consistently, and for all the stuff that's happening right now. Professors, my friends, my partner, like everyone that have come through. I have to, I'm amazed that people do it, and however I can keep and energize people to have that energy for others, and that empathy, and that genuine sense of having them accept me in their community. I want to keep that going.
Beautiful. Everybody has such good answers to this question. Sheila, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think because the question is, what is community to you and has it changed? I think the definition of community literally changed for me right now, hearing all of these answers. Because like, for me, literally 5 minutes ago, I was like, I define community as, a group of people who come together and they kind of uplift each other. But hearing these answers and hearing community being defined as a living, breathing entity, I think that now, like, that causes me to look at community in a different way. I think community is that bridge between the past and the present. It's being able to kind of like take everything that you've learned from the people that have come before you and then be able to apply it to future generations so that we're able to kind of push for the betterment of everyone as a whole. I always think of this, when I think of community, I think of this like wonderful Audre Lorde quote where she says that without community, there is no liberation. And then she says, that's not to say that, we're all the same. And it's not to completely disregard the differences that we have, but it's to take all of those differences and kind of, mold them together to birth this like beautiful future for everyone. So, community is not only coming together, but it's coming together and realizing that there's more to do so that the next generation and the next people that come and join the community are able to experience life wonderfully and like be able to live their best and truest selves.
This discussion is so amazing. I don't want to close, but I want to make sure we have time for our call to action. So I'm going to pass it over to Moses to talk about that.
So am I just directing them to fill out the Jamboard?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So if you have the link and want to respond to the question, what can you do to better my experience and the experience of others in higher education? And I'll start reading out some of the ones that are already there. For example, people said empathy exercises, centering yourself and the student in higher education, sharing information and informing peers of resources available to make the experience less overwhelming. And yeah, just take some time to fill that out.
Or if anybody wants to share and like actually talk it out now, you're welcome to.
Open floor.
Can I go? Okay. One thing that, after this discussion that I really feel like is super important is encouraging everybody to like take advantage of the resources available in the school about, free counseling that is, private, that is there for you. Is something that I have taken advantage of and has helped me a lot. Like I cannot just stress that enough. And that sometimes we think we are okay. But one thing that you can be doing is getting yourself busy to ignore how you're feeling, or simply isolating yourself. Or now that we are, attached to a computer most of the time, like having this lack of human interaction can affect us, and talking about that is key. So taking advantage of personal counseling is also is something that is super important, and encouraging like students to take advantage of that is just a thing that I will do all the time and that I'm actually doing already. And Another thing is about, educating about financial aid and stuff like that, because sometimes students, they get so much stress and anxiety because they just don't understand those things, and they don't have someone that can tell them, oh yeah, you need to declare your major before you start the semester or something like that, so you're able to get TAP. If you don't do it, you might lose it. Like, they don't know things like that, and it might be different, from school to school, but like Brooklyn College, it is like that, so that's why I mention it. And so it's just like key to like help them at least to know where to go whenever they have a question or something like that, because sometimes we start college, especially now, and we don't know where to go. And also, having empathy, like that person, I know probably you're having a crappy day, but if the person needs to like let out some stress or something like that, maybe give it an ear if you can. If you think that that's going to affect you, you have to put yourself first. But if you can at least, support that person, then do it, right? Or at least, direct them to where they can find the help and things like that. And there's so many other things that I want to talk about, but that's those two are like the most important right now. So yeah.
Anyone else want to say their answer out loud? I think that was a beautiful point brought up by Catalina, because there are, especially in these times, we don't have these resources. And I think something I would say that I can do to better the experience of others is be a resource. I think in the time where I entered school, I haven't been the resource I have been previously. Like, I haven't been either, if it's not mentoring people that are younger than me, or even trying to help people that are like in my same class. So I think that just being there for someone right now, and period, can help the experience of higher education, because each one teach one. And if we continue this process of paying it forward and just being there just for the sake of being there, not even for any moral desert, we can make not only higher education better, we can make the world better in that case, because it does start with education.
Yeah, I kind of want to add to that point. I think a really important thing to kind of think about when you are being a resource to someone else is, what does this person need? And a good question to kind of that I've been told recently that I really liked was, when someone's going through something, you can go, hey, do you want support or do you want comfort? It's a huge distinction that means a lot to people, and just that little phrase can mean a lot for people.
I love that distinction. Other folks, what can you do to make your experience or the experience of others in higher education better right now?
Kaysi, do you mind if I read one of them from the Jamboard? I see one
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know who put it down, but someone said, speak up, ask the dumb questions. I think that's so important, especially when you want to make the most of your time. Okay, like there's no, in my head at least, there's no such thing as a dumb question, because the chances are you're guaranteed to have someone else who wants to know the same thing as you. Especially in the classroom. I think that now that we're all behind computer screens, it's so important to reach out and ask those questions that you would be scared to ask for, the sake of looking some type of way, right? Like, these questions, we need to ask these questions because they're necessary. You're not the only one who wants to know, and I think that also being behind computer screens kind of leads us to have more of an incentive to reach out and to ask those like dumb questions. So I think that was a really good one. I really like that one on the Jamboard.
Valeria, do you want to chime in?
Hi, yeah. So thank you, Sheila. That was actually what I wrote. And you hit the nail on the head. You do have to ask those questions that may sound like they're a little dumb, but they're not. And I've noticed this also in person and in Zoom. I've always been the type of person to just ask and talk, because I I guess I just don't have any sense of shame in that way, but I've always noticed that if I do that in the beginning of the semester, people around me start asking the same questions, especially in Zoom. For example, the cameras, it may seem something very small, and I know I don't have mine turned on right now, but at the beginning of the semester, I do try to make it into a point of be active on Zoom, ask the questions, be on the chat, be on the camera, and people follow that. It's scary to be the only person at first, but I think it's about just making an environment in which people feel invited and not just having the attention of the professor be into one person or one subject, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Are there closing thoughts? We've got a couple minutes left. Does anyone else want to contribute what they can do to make their experience and others better?
I think there's a question in the chat.
Oh, what's a good approach for professors who aren't welcoming to those types of questions?
Which questions, like specifically, just for clarification?
I'd say do it anyway. I had a very intimidating professor on my first semester here, and nobody sat on the first row because everybody was terrified of him. I sat on the first row every single class, and I asked dumb questions every single class, and he seemed annoyed every single class. But guess what? People would come up to me after, and they would be like, thank you for asking this, or oh, I didn't know we had to study this, or oh, thank you for bringing this up. That was such a better way for him to explain it. Our classes would turn long and he wouldn't be able to get through all the material, but we would understand. And that's what was important, because I'm not gonna sit through a lecture that's going 100 miles per hour when I can see it in my face and everybody's faces that we don't get it. Just do it anyway. What are they gonna do? I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I've always seen it as in like, you're kind of my employee. You're there to teach me. You're there to ensure that I get the education I deserve. You have your education. You know what you've done. You are a professor. You're in your career. I am not. So just do it anyway. Thank you.
I'd also like to add an alternate view that you can also view this as. I think one of the things that you want to see people who kind of challenge your view is a challenge network. And what a challenge network is just a group of people that's always going to challenge your thoughts and ideas and push that forward. They're usually problems that we can't solve or problems that we're frustrated with. And, we want to have a dedicated person to focus on that, So if you're that person that's asking, a dumb question, right? And a professor doesn't want to engage with that. Now you're creating a challenge network for them, for your community, and you're engaging in a different form of leadership. And that's very important because, you're going to enter workspaces where, something may come up that's unethical or unfair, right? And it might be a dumb question to be like, well, why are we not doing anything about it? And that's a challenge network, and that's something important, especially part of leadership and when you're developing larger projects and concepts. And I think there are different ways we can always look at this, and that's just a really, really great thing that you should take into yourself. Because think about it like this, when there's an argument and if you're combating somebody in an argument, especially specifically a topic, right, you want to be able to understand where are the little kinks that I'm going to understand and research so deeply that there's no way they're going to be able to respond to me, right? And that's where you become a challenge network. If it's a dumb question, ask a dumber question, ask another one, because if you go further and further and further, you're going to figure out again, right? Well, I'm never going to have to ask those questions again because now I know every single thing, right? And so now you're building a community, and that's specifically what we've been talking about. That's a form of activism, a form of self-care, and I think that's a really great point.
As Katina said in the chat, we are basically at the end of time. Tuka, I know you've had your hand up a little while. Do you want to say your question quickly, or do you want to say your comment or put it in the chat or add it to the notes?
No, I just want to say hi. I was going to add to the challenge, no dumb question comment, but after what Sam said, there's nothing else to say. I love the challenge network, so I'm running with that right now. Thank you all so much. Hi, and Lauren. Sorry, I can't have my camera on right now. All right, thank you so much.
It's okay. Hi, Tuka.
Hey.
I think that's it, right, Kaysi? We're out of time. It's 4.
This was such a pleasure. Thank you all so much for this conversation. I feel like I have just been absorbing for the entire hour. So thank you. This is going to sit with me for a long time. And it was really great to both hear all your voices and see what everyone was saying in the chat. Really a perfect way to end the conference. So thank you.